Hello everyone. This video is all about the Philippine in the 19th century as Rizal's context. In this video, we're going to talk about the condition of the Philippines during the 19th century, but as Rizal's context. So we're going to talk about the different aspect of the 19th century condition of the Philippines in political. Okay, so we have the political condition of the 19th century of the Philippines, and then most especially is the economic institution or the economic stability of the 19th century in the Philippines. And we also have the social stratification of the Philippines during the 19th century. All of the aspect that I'm going to discuss in this video is all about or came from on Rizal's context. It came from Rizal's observation only. Ano po, hindi naman siya sa buong konsepto or buong aspeto ng pagkakaalam ng lahat ng tao during that time, but only on Rizal's observations lang. Okay, so let's start with political institutions. So, the political setup of the Philippines during the 19th century was headed by Governor General. Kung sa panahon natin ngayon, it was equivalent with the president. So, kumbaga, yung namumuno sa buong Pilipinas, by provinces rather, is the Governor General. And to give you an additional information, the first Governor General in the Philippines under Bourbon mandates was Jose de Basco y Vargas. So they arrived here in the Philippines during 1778. So it was already past 1 century during the Spanish colonization here in the Philippines. And to give you an the functions of this Governor General, they are performed a dual function. So, dito meron silang tinatawag na political function and then ecclesiastical function. So, sa panahon natin ngayon, the president or the uh, head of the country has only the power of execution or the executive part lang ng branch ng government. Pero sa panahon po ng 19th century or sa panahon ng um, pananakop ng mga Espanyol, we have the dual function of the Governor General, which is the political and ecclesiastical. So when we say uh, political power, way back tayo dun sa isang slide, when we say political power kasi, being a chief executive head of the colony, he was the one who managing the internal affairs of the state, as well as the executor of the laws of the land. Same with the president that we have today. He has also the power of execution of the laws, which is during that time, ang laws po na sinusunod is given by the constitution from Spain. Unlike today, we have the legislative department who was making or who were the authorized person for making and studying the laws that we are going to follow, something like that. And when we say political power also, it is under the so-called when we say kasi Governor General, he was considered also the chief real audiencia or the Spanish Supreme Court during the 19th century in the Philippines. So meaning to say, ang Supreme Court natin ngayon is under the judicial branch. So dito, during the 19th century, the Governor General is the one who performed this kind of power na kung saan siya yung may kakayahan na magtalaga ng kaso pagdating sa Supreme Court. So, kumbaga, siya ang Chief Justice, something like that. And we also have he was also the commanding officer of the armed forces, particularly the Navy and Army. Same with the condition that we have today. Ano po? Ganun din naman sa panahon natin ngayon. The troops, it was headed by the president. Yun nga lang, hindi siya katulad ng Governor General by that time na impromptu, nakasama siya doon. And when we say ecclesiastical, it was the power to settle the church matter because there was a union of church of state during the 19th century. This is one of the biggest difference between our times and then during the Spanish colonization. Sa panahon natin ngayon, we have now on our 1987 Constitution, that is Article 2, Section 6, that there is a separation of power between the church and state. Unlike the colonialism during the Spaniard time, there is a union between the church and state. So, kumbaga, iisa ang kapangyarihan ng Estado sa simbahan. And the main purpose of having this, what you call this, state is to protect the church. This is one of the, also the role or the purpose of having this, according to the King of Spain, the King of Spain, they have to protect the church from any other matters. And in order to check the powers of the Governor General, there were officials being sent by the King of Spain, which is yung pong tinatawag natin na residencia and visitadores. So, kumbaga, they are the checkers if these Governor Generals doing their job well, something like that. So, when we say residensya, sila po yung mga permanent official who will scrutinize the performance of the outgoing Governor General. So, during the time of 19th century, there is only 2-year term every Governor General na mailuluklok po sa posisyon na yon. So, dun sa 2 years term na yon, dapat itong ang residensya, siya lang talaga yung nandito sa Philippines. Ang visitadores naman, dadating lang yan sa Pilipinas kapag pinapunta yan ng hari ng Espanya. And take note, the incoming Governor General would be probably coming from the residensya. So, kumbaga, sinasabi dito na isa ito sa ipapadala ng hari ng Espanya para alamin kung ano yung ginagawa or ginagawa ba ng tama ng Governor General yung kanyang posisyon o yung kanyang trabaho, something like that. So, dito, kung sino yung naging visitador, halimbawa, naging Governor General ka, kung sino ang pinadalang visitadores sa'yo ng Hari ng Espanya, meaning to say, pagtapos ng termino mo, siya ang papalit dun sa pwesto mo. Ano po? And, we also have the local setup. Ano po? So, dito sa local setup, the government is divided into provinces, cities, and barangays. Unlike today, we have the different regions. Pero during the 19th century, our country was only divided into provinces, cities, and barangays. So, we have the so-called alcalde mayor. Sa panahon po natin ngayon, equivalent siya ng governor. So, meaning to say, he was the executive of executive body of the bawat provinces in the provinces. Ano po? So, dito, alcalde mayor is equivalent to governor. We also have the gobernadorcillo. Dito, nagkakaroon lagi ng misconception. Kapag nadinig yung alcalde mayor, ang pumapasok agad sa isip ay mayor, which is no. Ang alcalde mayor po ay mas mataas sa katungkulan ng mayor. At ang gobernadorcillo, if we're going to convert it or ihalin tulad natin sa panahon natin ngayon, gobernadorcillo po, sila lang naman yung namumuno sa bawat pueblos. So, when say pueblos, it is the little towns o yung mga bayan-bayan. Okay, so, katulad nito, pag sinabing gobernadorcillo, he was the head of the city or the town, and then, ang tawag kasi sa city or town during the 19th century is ayuntamiento. We also have the cabeza de barangay, which is the chief of the barangay, and they are served as the tax collector of their constituents. So, the cabeza de barangay, aside from being a chief of this little towns or the barangay, he was also the person who collect tax. Ano po? So, yung mga triboto na tinatawag during that time. Ngayon, meron siyang kanang kamay na tinatawag na umalohokan. Ang umalohokan po is ito yung tagapagbalita sa buong barangay kung ano yung magiging, kung merong mga panibagong balita or let's say may anunsyo na galing sa Gobernador General, Gobernador Silio, Alcalde Mayor o sa Cabeza de Barangay. Umaluhokan po yung nagiging daan para malaman ng taong bayan kung ano yung mga panukala or bagong panukala na ipapaabot sa kanila. And during the 19th century, friars became more influential and powerful because of the friarocracy na tinatawag or role of the friars. To give you an additional trivia about the term friarocracy, the term friarocracy was coined by Marcelo H. Del Pilar. Ngayon, this is one of the main reason why our reformists and nationalists work harder to let the people know who are the real enemies. Kasi this is one of the brutal cases po during the 19th century na ang pinakang influential bukod sa gobernador general ay ang mga pare. So kung ano yung nasa tingin nila na maganda, na nakasaad daw, something like may mga ganong kasing konsepto. So kumbaga, kung mababasa nyo kasi yung ibang libro na nagsasaad ng brutality about the Spaniards friars is ito yung isa sa mga tinitingnang dahilan or ito talaga yung pinakang dahilan kung bakit nagkaroon ng mga reformist, ng mga revolutionaries during the time of Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio. Kaya sila nagkaroon ng idea about this reformation of the Philippine country. Okay, so we have the significant events under the political institution during the 19th century. Unang-una po, we have the opening of Suez Canal, democratic leadership of Governor General de la Torre. We have the Governor General Izquierdo's replacement of de la Torre, and then most especially the CAVITE Mutiny. So, let's start with opening of the Suez Canal. So, what is the Suez Canal? So, ito po yung Suez Canal. Isa siyang ruta sa tubig, And it was opened November 17, 1869. Ito yung first or pinakamadaling daanan during that time para sa transaksyon. Nakatulong ito pagdating po sa ekonomiya ng Pilipinas during the 19th century kasi mas napabilis yung transaksyon ng mga medias, unang-una media, the newspaper, the articles, the magazines. And this is the first infrastructure that paved the way for the importation of books, magazines, and newspaper with liberal ideas from Europe and America. And this is also one of the way para mas maiparating pa po nila Jose Rizal during that time sa ibang bansa kung ano talaga yung totoong kalagayan ng Pilipinas. And this was also the instrumental to political awakening of, ito na sinasabi ko, Rizal, because he was able to expand his perspective, therefore shaping his nationalist sensibilities. Because of the opening of Suez Canal, nagkaroon ng idea si Rizal kung ano ba talaga ang dapat na or kung sino ba talaga yung totoong kaaway during the 19th century. And we also have the democratic leadership of Governor General de la Torre. So, this is Governor General de la Torre. And he became a Governor General from 1869 to 1871. He gave, according to the history, he gave the Filipinos the foretaste of democratic rule. So, some reformists and some historians saying that under the leadership of Governor General de la Torre, hindi dito nakaranas ng hirap ang mga Filipino during that time o ang mga Indio na tinatawag. So, kumbaga, Governor General de la Torre is hindi ganun kahigpit katulad ng ibang naging Governor General sa panahon ng 19th century. The leadership of General de la Torre is the media censorship became relaxed and limited secularization of education began. So, kumbaga dito na-lessen yung pagtuturo po ng all about the biblical things. So, dito nagkaroon na rin ng iba't ibang mga subjects to be taken by the every tertiary level students in different university in the Philippines during the 19th century. And these are the achievement of Governor General de la Torre. So dito, the abolition of censorship of the press, walang pinipiling balita na ilalabas during that time. Unlike ng mga kasi de la Torre kasi, hindi naman siya totally tumatalikod sa simbahan during that time. But, the main point is, hindi siya ganun ka strict pagdating sa paglabas ng kung ano yung dapat malaman ng taong bayan. And the suppression of flogging as the punishment for desertion among native soldier and substitution at from month of imprisonment. Kasi, grabe yung inaabot ng mga native soldier during that time. And the settlement of agrarian roles in Cavite and the appointment of Eduardo Camerino and leader of aggrieved tenants as captains of Guías de la Torre with the power to assist the Guardia Civil. And his approval of Moral Decree of November 6, 1870, which would secularize certain secondary and collegiate institution of the learning in Manila. So, during November 6 po yun na ipatupad. And to give you an additional information about Governor General, he became a Governor General in the Philippines during June 23, 1869. And he did away with the guard of halberdiers that watched his palace. And this is Governor General Izquierdo's replacement of De la Torre. So, eto naman po si Izquierdo is kabaliktaran ng pamumuno ni De la Torre. So, he became the Governor General by 1871 to 1873. He is also the Visitadores of De la Torre. So, kumbaga, sabi ko nga kanina, ang papalit sa pwesto mo bilang Governor General is kung sino yung naging Visitadores mo. So, si Izquierdo yun. So, according to the history, it was exactly opposite of the De la Torre's liberal-minded rule. He imposed harsh policies and laws far from the liberal measures that De la Torre implemented. So, he became one of the brutal Governor General of the Philippines. Actually, hindi lang siya yung became one of them. Actually, he was the most brutal Governor General of the Philippines during the 19th century. And, okay, so, actually, Izquierdo was also responsible for removing the long-standing personal benefits of the worker under the encomienda system and forced labor exemptions among soldiers. And because of the governing body of the Governor General Izquierdo o yung pamumuno mismo ni Izquierdo, it leads to the CAVITE Mutiny na tinatawag, which is nangyari po yan January 20, 1872. Ang Cavite Mutiny po ay isang pag-aalsa na naganap sa Cavite. But according to the history, it was a failed uprising. Kasi nga na-booking po sila dito. And that yung pagkaka-booking naman na yun, doon naman yung nag-lead yung garote doon sa tatlong paring martir. So that was a stage about the 200 personnel of San Felipe Arsenal in Cavite. It was a failed uprising against the Spaniards, resulting in disarmed, imprisoned, and dead Filipino soldiers. And under the term of Governor General Izquierdo, the Gumburza was executed. So, sino-sino ba yung Gumburza? If you still remember, we have Father Mariano Gomez, Jose Burgos, and Jacinto Zamora. So, here they are. Ano po? So, sila po yung tatlong paring martyr. And, according to the Spaniards, they proclaimed that they were the instigator of the said mutiny. Na sila daw po ang nag-umpisa nito. Ano po? And they were executed through garrote system in Bagong Bayan during February 15, 1872. Actually, in some books, it was February 17, 1872. Ano po? 17 talaga siya, hindi siya 15. May mga ibang references na nakalagay 15. And if you still remember, according to Rizal, according to Zaide's book, he dedicated the Rizal's El Filibusterismo was dedicated to the three priests, and the martyrdom of the three priests awakened the desire for the independence among the many Filipinos during the 19th century. Okay, so that is for political institution. Now let's have now the economic institution or economic situation of the Philippines during the 19th century. So the first thing we have to look back here is the encomienda system. So this is one of the system of the economic in the Philippines during the 19th century. So the leasehold system became one of the main economic programs of the Spain in the Philippines, which is the encomienda system. Excuse me. Another form of abuse was the monopoly system or known the bandola system, yung tinatawag po. One of the example of the bandola system sa kanila is yung pong sa galleon trade. Uso dito yan sa mga Spaniard na minomonopolize nila yung mga products. Ano po. So dito sa galleon trade, if you still remember, this is a kind of trading system between Philippines, kumbaga, trading route or trading system between Acapulco, Mexico, papunta po siya ng Manila Bay sa Philippines. Vice versa yon, Manila to Acapulco, Mexico. Sa galleon trade kasi, hindi ganun kadaling makabili ng mga product na dinadala sa Pilipinas. So, kailangan meron muna tayo ng tinatawag na boletas. So, this is a kind of ticket. Ano po, ticket na magagamit ng isang merchant para mabili niya yung mga goods na kailangan niya dun sa loob ng ship o ng loob mismo nung um, tawag dito, nung galyon. So, through this kind of system, minomonopolize po siya ng mga Spaniard, especially the buying and selling of the raw materials, and the middlemen sold them. They are sold it or they are selling it on a higher cost rather than na kung paano nila ito ibenta. So, mas tumataas yung presyo because of this kind of system. And another is the Industrial Revolution, which refers to the transition of new manufacturing processes that made use of the steam power, special purposes machinery, factories, and mass production in Europe. Also, it affects the Philippine economy. Actually, there is always disadvantage and advantage pagdating sa ganitong sistema po. Industrial Revolution gave an advantage pagdating po sa economy ng Philippines during the 19th century, according to Rizal. But, doon lamang po sa Kamaynilaan. Dito lang siya sa mga head of state. Kasi talo niya na dito yung mga maliliit na farmers sa iba't ibang probinsya during that time. Kasi mas, mga machineries na palta na, something like that. Mas nagkaroon ng maayos na modernization noong time na yon. Yun nga lang, kawawa yung mga small businesses because of this industrial revolution during the 19th century. Okay, so aside from economic and political, we also have the social stratification or the social institution. So we are going to have this hierarchy, racial hierarchy of the Philippines or colonial Philippines. So as you can see, on the top, we have the so-called Peninsulares. So when they say Peninsulares, they are the pure-blooded Spaniard born in Spain, which is naninirahan dito sa Philippines. Pero, one of the discriminatory part pagdating sa pag-recognize kung sino ba talaga ang Filipino during the 19th century is this kind of system. So, kung mapapansin nyo, Peninsulares, Insulares, Mestizos, yung mga nasa taas. And they consider themselves as a Filipino. So, sa tingin nila, sila talaga yung Filipino, not the Indios, not the Aitas, not the Negritos. But in reality, or in our times today, we consider that Aitas, Negritos, and then Mamanwa, Batak, sila talaga yung mga pure Filipino kasi sila yung native na galing dito talaga sa Philippines bago pa tayo mabuhay. So, kumbaga, tayo, we have the combination of different races na. And the term Filipino, to give you an additional trivia about it, is it was only coined by Gato si Rizal. Yung term na Filipino, si Rizal lang yung nagbigay nito sa atin. So, ang tawag kasi sa atin as a native, native people in the Philippines, or dito talaga pinanganak, or both mother and father are native in the Philippines, is Indio yung tawag sa atin. So, when they say Indio, ito yung, sinasabi na bobo, mangmang, ututo, ganun yung tingin nila pag Indio. Yun yung tingin ng mga Spaniard during that time. Kaya discriminatory pa dito, hindi basta-basta nakakapasok ng eskwelahan ang isang Indio unless otherwise you are part of the Ilustrado family or you are part of the Principalias. When we say Principalia, it was the full-blooded native Indio, but the both mother and father is kumbaga merchant dito sa Philippines or meron silang inuupahan na lupa para sakahan, something like that. Like katulad po ng nangyari kay Gato sa Rizal. Actually, we can consider that Rizal is a native of the Philippines, but he was considered himself as a native of the Philippines kasi nandito yung puso niya. Dito siya pinanganak. And way back 1600, when his ancestors came here, dito na sila nanirahan, dito na sila nagkapamilya. That's why they consider themselves as a native in the Philippines. Ano po? So, and at the same time, kasi yung mother side ni Rizal is came from the Japanese ancestors. And then yung father niya is Chinese ancestor. So, if we are going to look here, maliit lang yung porsyento na si Rizal ay may lahing Filipino. Kasi yung naasawa ng lolo ni Rizal, yung great-great-grandfather niya on his father's side is full-blooded Chinese din. Pero yung sa mother side niya, nakaasawa po ng mga Filipina o ng mga Indio, mga full-blooded Indios. That's why si Rizal, kahit pa paano, meron naman siyang lahing Filipino. Pero um, sa races na talaga is Japanese and Chinese ang lahi nila Rizal. We also have Insulares. So when we say Insulares naman, full-blooded Spaniard which is born in the Philippines. Pero both side are Spaniard. And then Tornatras naman, it is a person with mix of Spanish, Chinese, and Austronesian descent, which is born in the Philippines din po. So when we say mestizo de Español or Spanish mestizo na tinatawag, it is half Spanish and half Filipino or half native. Ano po, so it's either your mother or father in Spanish or vice versa, something like that. We also have the mestizo de sangle. So when we say mestizo de sangle, they are the Chinese mestizo. So same with Spanish mestizo, half Chinese and half native. Sangle naman, they are the pure full-blooded Chinese. We also have the Principalio, which is a wealthy, pure-blooded native. So, katulad na rin po ng family nila Gato si Rizal. And the native naman, or Indio na tinatawag is pure-blooded native of the Philippines or full-blooded Austronesians. We also have the Negrito, which is, according to our history, they are the full-blooded Aita, Batak, or Mamanwa, which is a native of the Philippines. So, sila talaga yung mga purong Pilipino, according to our history. Okay, so that is the end of my discussion. And I hope you learned something about the 19th century as Rizal's context of the Philippines. So, that would be all for this video. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.